Because the truth is that if you decide that you want to have children someday, every decision that you make right now is not just about you. It is about the children that you haven't even seen yet, that you're just kind of hoping for, imagining for someday. And that's a really heavy responsibility. But maybe if the responsibility that you have to yourself, to maximize yourself and create the best version of yourself, if that isn't enough to motivate you to be better than what you presently are and to figure out what it is and to aim yourself at great things, then hopefully the awareness that whether or not you achieve greater things and whether or not you do maximize yourself is going to affect not just you, but the children that you hope to have someday. And we can say things like I said, to be supportive. Okay. Do you think that Joseph Stalin would have been better off if he had a more supportive mom? Do you think Hitler would have been a better person if he had a more supportive mom? If his mom was like, genocide, honey, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And if those are your dreams, and of course those aren't the dreams of everybody, but if those are your dreams, then should we support people in that? Should your parents support you in that? Or at some point your parents step in and say, honey, do not wipe out an entire race of people, okay? Honey, do not wipe out the social dissidents, okay? Do not create the gulag systems. Don't kill 70 million people, okay? Now, of course, there's a long, wide distance between that and if you want to, I don't know, get a job and they don't support you in that, or if you don't want to go to college, they don't support you in that. But I just wonder, do you really, I know there are some, of course, and I really do mean that, there are some people who do this, but do you think that most parents wake up in the morning and just think how could I ruin my kid today? Or how could I be unsupportive? Or do you think that there is something going on there where they do think that they're doing the right thing? Now there are some, of course, and again, I do know some who just think my kid is having too good of a time, or my kid is, and there's almost like a resentment that they seem to have towards their kids. But those are pretty uncommon. Those aren't common. So I guess I'm going to ask that question, how do we know where those lines are to support or not support? So maybe we can make something of a list. So to be a good parent, you must be wise. Because if I were to ask you guys, or to ask anybody in here for $1 million, can anybody in here give me $1 million? Why not? You don't have it. You just don't have it. So if you had, $100 million, $500 million, yeah, you could give me $1 million. No sweat off your back. But if I were to ask you for $1 million and you've got $7, then you can't give me something you don't have. And that's just obvious. And so you can't give a person wisdom unless you have wisdom. So that's one thing you have to have, sure. What else do you have to be a good parent? We said one of them a minute ago, to be supportive. So you have to know this difference between enabling. Why can't I spell enable right now? That says enabling versus being supportive. Okay. I guess I'll ask that question. What is the difference? Okay. Other things it takes. Yeah. To be loving. Oh, and that's, by the way, that's going to be a hard one too. To understand what it means to be loving. So by loving, what do you mean? But then also another way of being loving is this part right here. To know when you're enabling versus when you're being supportive. And sometimes being loving is to not enable. When you see, like we're saying, if you see somebody making a horrible decision, to be willing to step in, having the wisdom to know that it's a bad decision, being willing to step in, and sometimes being willing to really anger your kids because it's for the best. And that's a hard thing to be willing to be hated. And of course, I've been told with parents, when you get mad at your parents, it really bothers parents when their kids get mad at them. If the parents are actually caring. And so we're actually going to read about a bunch of this stuff coming up. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And I wonder how many people actually put together a list like this and think about this before having kids. Like, how many parents sit there and go, what do I have to be in order to be a good parent? And one of the ones that I didn't write it down here, but well, I guess it's kind of here, to be a good person. To be a good person. I start off by making that joke stuff about like Stalin, but I wonder how many of you, like if you were to ask your parents, what do you want me to be like? What do you want for me in life? And it's interesting, for example, if you guys had kids, what would you want for your kids? I ask because those are, can you guess what the most common answer I get from people is?
Successful.
Successful, what's that?
Not dumb.
Not dumb. The most common answer I get from people is, I just want my kids to be happy. I want my kids to be happy. And that's interesting. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Doing what? It's like, you're going back to that silliness. Well, so you want Stalin just to be happy. Oh. I remember one time asking my mom what she wants from me. I think I was like 7th grade. I was a bit different, as you maybe can imagine, as I was growing up. I was a wee bit different. And I asked my mom, what would you want for me as I become an adult? And I was thinking like I would get that answer, maybe, like I want you to be happy, just be happy. And by the way, that's a really hard curse to put on people. I just want you to be happy. Because if I were to ask you, well, how do you become happy? That's hard, Like how many genuinely, truly happy people do you know? And hopefully, you probably do know a couple, but think about like 8 billion people, or think about all of the hundreds of people that you know in your life. How many people can you look at and go, that's a happy person right there? And by the way, and again, there are some that you probably don't even realize are happy. But if I were to, you can't just like command a person to be happy. Like if I were to tell you guys, all right guys, laugh. Yeah, see? That's not real. You can't command a person to laugh. I have to give you a reason to laugh. And you notice how like me saying to you, laugh, makes you go, a fake laugh, which made some people laugh for real. So you can get a real laughter out of people. But I can't just command you to laugh. I can't just it's like if I came along and said, you know what? You gotta be optimistic about the future. You gotta be optimistic. Okay. You can't command a person to be optimistic. You have to give a person a reason to be optimistic. I have to give you a reason to laugh, and therefore I also, not me, but you have to have a reason to be happy in life. And it isn't just, like people say, oh, happiness is just a choice. Not really. And so if you tell a person, hey, just be happy, a lot of times we end up pretending to be something that we're not. We pretend to be happy. And of course, you see the hard part about that. If everybody in here is pretending to be happy and I'm not, I can start to think that there must be something uniquely wrong with me. Like somehow I'm uniquely cursed. There's something wrong with me. Everybody else seems happy. How come I'm not happy? And then you start to pretend to be happy, which makes everybody else think that everybody's happy. But each person individually, of course, may or might not be. But you're pretending to be because you think everybody else is. And so if I were to ask you, what do you want your kid to be? Again, the most common answer I get is to be happy. It's hard to do. I remember that my mom gave me the answer. She gave me that answer. She said, I want you to be a good person. And I was like, oh man. So now I started thinking now I'm tasked with understanding what it is to be a good person. And I was asking her well, don't you want me to be happy? And she said, if it's a choice between you being a good person and making the world better or being happy, I'd rather you be a good person rather than be happy. And I was thinking, crap, like 7th grade me. I was like, okay. So now I'm trying to figure that. And I haven't heard that answer from very many people at all. Most of the time it really is for his parents, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to be happy. And when you're born, when everybody is born, probably literally almost 100% of people are born. for the most part, we're held by moms who probably look at us and say, I want better for you than I had. I want you to be happy. I want you to be better. In other words, we set out with the best intentions. And yet, so many people end up not well adjusted because of how they were brought up. And it isn't, what I want us to understand is that it's not like necessarily that people are just terrible people, like my parents are just terrible people. No, it's like a lot of times we just perish for lack of wisdom. We don't know what it is to be a good parent. And it's like, well, yeah, but they could find out, like when? Between working hours, between trying to get some rest because they're having to work so much, between all the other obligations of life. It's like, yeah, it's probably true. We might say that there's no bigger job that you have than being a parent. Once you become a parent, that should be the focus, but there's all kinds of shoulds that we can put on other people in life. You should do this and you should do that. And it might be so clear to us. The truth is that like in many things in life, people are doing what they think is the best that they can do. Can people do better than what they think they can do? Oh yeah. like you guys in this class right now, no matter what terrible, horrible situations you're in life, or what bad things you've done in life, nobody in here is so bad off that they can't do way better in their lives than what you think you're capable of. Like what you think you're capable of is only a fraction of what you actually are capable of. And you might think like, well, you don't know me. That's true. Imagine if I did know you, how much more capable I would know that you are. Because we sell ourselves so short oftentimes. We hold people to these incredibly high standards of it, especially ourselves. And so what we could be, if we just kind of like took time, oftentimes just reflect, figure out, what am I? What do I want to be? How do I get to there? If I wanted to be a parent, I have to be wise. Okay, so now I gotta find out what wisdom is. I gotta develop that thing. Now, if you have you'll hear me say this from time to time, if you have a why, you'll find a how. If you have a reason for things, then you'll find a way to achieve them. So if I were to tell you all right now, run. How come no one's running? Run. Why aren't you running? Why aren't you running? Obvious answer. You're sitting down, but you can always stand up and run. What's that? Yeah, why? Why? If I were to tell you all, oh, you guys don't see the guy standing right there with the gun outside the window pointing at all of us? Well, now you'd start running because you'd have a reason for it. If you walk into this English class and I ask you, why are you here? Oh, for a better future. I don't know. What am I supposed to say? If you don't have a reason for something, you're not going to do it well. If you have a reason for it, you're going to do it well. If you have a purpose for it, you're going to do it well. So hopefully if we tell you, like, gain some wisdom. Why? Because the wisdom that you have is not just for you. It's going to be for the little people that you create. Figure out what it is to have good morals. Carry those things out. Enabling and supporting. And that, by the way, that means actually finding out. That isn't just like, what does my heart feel? Our hearts are for many of us, are just desperately wicked, man. Because we're so full of what we want for ourselves, or we're so self-centered because we don't have a perspective of stepping outside of ourselves. It doesn't mean we're a terrible person. It just means we haven't stepped outside of ourselves to figure out what these things are. And to know what it is to be good is not necessarily intuitive. It's not so simple that we all just kind of know what it is. Because our intuition oftentimes points directly back at ourselves. What would benefit me? What could I get out of this? How can I, rise up from here? And so, actually figuring out what it is. But here's the really hard thing, and here's the rub, man. Curiosity. How many of you guys want to have children someday, perhaps? So understand, therefore, that every single decision that you make right now impacts those future children. When you sit in here and you kind of or any class, I guess I should say, and you kind of start daydreaming and dozing off and thinking about something else, and then now you're not performing as well as you could, that's going to stop you from performing as well as you could in life. That's the situation that you're going to be bringing your children into someday. Every single decision that you make right now, everything that you eat right now, even then, will determine how long you're going to live, how much energy you're going to have, how cognitively capable you're going to be. And that's going to affect your options in life and where you are in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20, however old you're going to be when you have children. The decisions that you're making right now will lead you directly to that point that you are. So I guess the question is going to be, where do you want to be when you have children? Do you want to be down here, less than what you could have been? Do you want to be the best possible version of yourself so that you can bring them into the best possible situation in life? Are you just going to wing it and see what happens? Like a lot of people do. Because the truth is that if you decide that you want to have children someday, every decision that you make right now is not just about you. It is about the children that you haven't even seen yet, that you're just kind of hoping for, imagining for someday. And that's a really heavy responsibility. But maybe if the responsibility that you have to yourself to maximize yourself and create the best version of yourself, if that isn't enough to motivate you to be better than what you presently are and to figure out what it is and to aim yourself at great things, then hopefully the awareness that whether or not you achieve greater things and whether or not you do maximize yourself is going to affect not just you, but the children that you hope to have someday. And I wonder how many of us think about this with our parents. Like we think, man, I wish I was in a better situation today. You know, maybe the people around me did what they thought was the best, but now I know that I could be better. I can start making this list to figure out what I want to be, not just as a parent, but as a human being, because that's where it all starts. That's the fundamental unit of parenthood, is to be a good human being and then to make human beings from there. But that's a heavy responsibility now if you've decided that you want to have children someday. And even if you think it's a possibility that you might, even though you don't want to right now, that so many of you want to is a pretty impressive thing. It's usually like a quarter of the class, which is funny because then you realize that like 3/4 of you are going to have them, even if you say you don't. You know, so many of you that do. That's impressive, but that also means that you have a responsibility now. And so, how seriously you take it doesn't just affect you, but it affects your kids someday too. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques. I should, by the way, say that's a good thing, because don't think of it like, oh my God, so this is going to be a heavy responsibility. You could very well approach it from this perspective of, that's awesome. So I really can create this great situation for my future kids someday, and take that responsibility seriously and joyfully, and really pour yourself into it because it gives you purpose and meaning. However it is you approach it, whichever of those two views that you take is going to be up to you, but it'll determine a lot. So, sorry, I wanted to end with something, trying to end something positive for once. Happy Wednesday-ish? All right. The next one's gonna be really funny and happy and joyful. Does anybody believe that?
No.
No, I start off by telling you they take a dark turn from here.